by coming in the wrong way. How auspicious. So I'm starting with Voltaire's contribution to the Encyclopédie under the entry for history. History is the narrative of facts presented as true, in contrast to the fable, which is the recitation of facts presented as false. There's the history of opinions, which is hardly other than the collection of human errors. The history of the arts, perhaps the most useful of all, when it is joined to the knowledge of inventions and the progress of the arts, and which is the description of their mechanism, natural history, inappropriately termed history, and which is an essential part of physics. The basic foundations of all history are the stories recounted by parents to their children and subsequently transmitted from one generation to the next. They are merely probable in their origins and lose a degree of probability with each succeeding generation. Over time, the fable grows and the truth is lost. Hence, the origins of all peoples are absurd. Thus, the Egyptians were governed by the gods for many centuries, then by demigods, and finally they had kings who ruled them for 11,340 years. The sun in this period of time had changed where it rose in the east and set in the west 4 times. In the shadows of history, nothing is known except that there were vast empires that lasted a very long time, that there were tyrants whose power was based on public misery, that tyranny was so extensive that it reached the point of stripping men of their virility to use them for infamous pleasures, starting at the end of their childhood, and to employ them in their old age to guard women, that superstition governed men, that a dream was regarded as a sign from above, and that the world would govern peace and war, etc. The art of writing history very well will always be rare. It is well known that one must have a grave, pure, varied, agreeable style. There are laws for writing history, just as there are laws for all the arts of the mind. There are many precepts, and yet so few great artists. Next, we move to historian Jacob Burckhardt. Now, among all the fields of learning in the world, there prevails, like a fundamental chord that keeps sounding through, the history of the ancient world, i.e. of all those peoples whose lives have flowed into ours. Now, it would be idle to assume that after 4 centuries of humanism, everything had been learned from the ancient world. All experiences and data had been used, and there were no longer anything to be gained there, so one could content oneself with a knowledge of more modern times, or possibly make a pitying or reluctant study of the Middle Ages and spend the time saved on more useful things. We shall never be rid of antiquity as long as we do not become barbarians again. Barbarians and modern American men of culture live without consciousness of history. In our problematical and wonderful existence, we cling involuntarily to the knowledge of man as such, of mankind, empirical as we meet it in life, and as it is revealed by history. The contemplation of nature does not suffice us, does not console or instruct us enough. And here we must not seal ourselves off from anything past. We must leave no gaps. Only the whole speaks to us in all centuries that have left us records. Are the 3 great ages of the world perhaps like the 3 times of day in the riddle of the Sphinx? They are, rather a continual transmission of acting and suffering man through countless incarnations. A genuine inquiry will want to recognize all these mutations and abandon any partiality for specific ages. It is all right to have a predilection, for that is a matter of taste. And it will do this all the sooner the livelier the feeling for human inadequacy in general is. Once it's understood that there never were, never will be any happy golden ages in a fanciful sense, one will remain free from the foolish over-evaluation of some past, some senseless despair of the present, or fatuous hope for the future, but one will recognize in the contemplation of historical ages one of the most noble undertakings. It is the story of life and the suffering of mankind viewed as a whole. And that's history.